What's up, Hoopers? Ashley Nicole Moss here, and welcome to Triple Threat. And look, if I sound like Doc Rivers after blowing yet another 3-1 lead, it is because my voice is absolutely gone, but that is not going to stop us because we have a jam-packed show. We have Evan Turner in the building. We have another special guest who I'm going to wait to introduce a little bit later on in the show. But first, we got to talk about the Lakers, and not in the way that you think. We'll get into Luka, the Mavs, LeBron, that whole saga, but the guy that I want to talk about goes by the name of Dalton Knecht. Now, if you missed it, Dalton Knecht was traded and then untraded, but his feelings apparently are still hurt. There was a tweet that was circulating by one of the Lakers beat writers, and it said that JJ Redick spoke to Dalton Knecht and said that he was going to take, meaning Dalton Knecht was, some time to process everything that has transpired over the past few days. There he is right there. Now, if you have to wonder, process what? Think about this, okay? 1 minute you were traded. The organization that you wanted to be part of made it clear that they didn't want you. Then the guy that they traded for apparently, allegedly failed his physical, and the whole trade was rescinded and X'd out of communication, whatever you want to call it. No deal, briefcase closed, and here you come back into the Lakers locker room, and you're supposed to act like everything is just A-okay. Now, there was a video circulating on social media of Dalton Knecht at the Lakers game post being kind of sort of traded, and he didn't really look like he was thrilled to be there. I don't know if we have that video queued up. If we do, let's go ahead and play that. Okay, so we don't have that video queued up, so I'm going to just walk you through it. It's Dalton Knecht in this gray jumpsuit and sweatsuit, rather. Men don't call them jumpsuits, they call them sweatsuits. Sorry about that. And he's just kind of walking around the Lakers bench looking lost, dazed, and confused. And I feel you, Dalton Knecht. I'm somebody who is known to hold a grudge. Maybe. I feel like I can hold a grudge. I'm a Capricorn. It's in our DNA. If you don't know about Capricorns, Google it at the commercial break. But look, his feelings are hurt, and I get it. My feelings would be hurt too. You said you didn't want me. Now you want me back because the guy that you wanted isn't available for you to be with now. Now I'm supposed to come back and act like things are all good. Listen, maybe that analogy was a little odd. Evan Turner's in the studio. He just gave me a look. Let me rephrase it like this. I actually used this analogy when I was talking about JJ Redick taking the Lakers job. All right. So this analogy applies here too. The girl that you wanted didn't want you, and now your second option is trying to come back to me and be like, hey, let's work this thing out. We're not working this thing out. I need time to decompress that I was always plan B. This is why trades need to be confirmed before players are moved, before players are notified, before players are pretty much anything, because there is always a chance that it does not work out. And now you have a semi-disgruntled star or player, I should say. I know that the NBA community hates when I use the word star loosely, so I'm just going to say player. You have a semi-disgruntled player now he's supposed to implement himself right back into the Lakers offense, defense, locker room, just team morale in general. Like it's all good. Like it didn't go ahead and try to trade me just a few days ago. Dalton, you take all the time that you need. Take care of your mental. Take care of your chicken, as my guy Marshawn Lynch would say, and do what you need to do. Because as we have seen throughout the entirety of the NBA, the history of sports in general, and specifically this NBA trade deadline, teams will always do what is best for them. Listen, we will be right back after this quick break, and Evan Turner is going to be joining us in studio, and we're going to talk about the biggest story coming out of LA, and that is a guy by the name of Luka. He's now wearing 77, but for the purple and gold. Yeah, it happens. Welcome back, everyone, to Triple Threat. And first and foremost, before I shout out Evan Turner, who is in studio with me, shout out to Janita for bringing me some tea, because as you can hear, my throat desperately needs it. So we are ready to go for the rest of the show. Did that rhyme? Ready to go for the rest of the show?
That definitely.
Dang.
You are so
I turn into Jay-Z when I'm not feeling well.
It's like Miss Lotto.
Low key, fade to black. Listen, we talked about Dalton Knecht. in the opening monologue, or I did rather, but that is not the Laker that everybody has on the tip of their tongue. Obviously, it's all about number 77, Luka. He made his debut against the Jazz. It was kind of like watching Black Mirror, where it was like you were in a simulation, maybe like of the future, or like what could have been if life was different, but it was real. And it very much is happening. It's very much here. First and foremost, has it sunk in for you yet?
No, it hasn't. It's still surreal. We were just talking about it earlier, like who trades Luka at 25? So I thought that was kind of crazy. And then like you see the clip of JJ Redick just kind of looking at the bench and being like, what is...
You saw him catch himself with the Kanye smile where it was like...
Stop. Like, stop. Like, man, this is my life. And I think it's just crazy, man. I think even Luka was kind of trying to figure out what was going on. You know, you see him walk out for the warm-ups and people are going crazy. And, you know, obviously it was Luka mania. So it was a great first game. You know, obviously everybody played at a high level. And you just seen a little bit of what Luka was able to do. He's going to find his stride and get back to the 20-point, 30-point nights.
Yeah. I'm going to give people some advice when it comes to dealing with people, but specifically women, but this actually applies to all people because we're talking about Luka. He's obviously not a woman. If you made a mistake, the best thing you can do is just own it, not double down on it. And that is a memo that the Mavs organization clearly did not get because the Mavs owner threw shade at Luka in the Dallas Morning News. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Mavs owner threw shade at the generational player Luka in the Dallas Morning News. Here's the quote. If you look at the greats in the league, the people you and I grew up with, Jordan, Bird, Kobe, Shaq, they worked really hard every day with a singular focus to win. Excuse me. Oh my God, that was gross. And if it doesn't have that, it doesn't work. And if you don't have that, you shouldn't be part of the Dallas Mavericks. That's who we want. I'm unwavering on this. The entire organization knows this. This is how I operate outside of basketball. This is the only way to be competitive and win. If you want to take a vacation, don't do it with us.
Great.
There's a lot to unpack here, Evan. I mean, first, initial feelings about this.
Man, I don't think generational.
He's speechless. In case you couldn't gauge that from what we're having this conversation we're having right now.
Yeah, I don't understand. I think like when it comes down to certain, like the NBA is a wild area. Like you know what I mean? Like sometimes what makes sense doesn't really make sense. Sometimes the best 400 players in the world might not always be there. But like when it comes down to competitive nature, drive, and I guess quote unquote like your players, you got to let a star be a star. You got to let people prepare how they prepare. But at the same time, speak like that when you have like a replacement for him that's generational. You know what's funny to me about this quote, though? I mean, there's a lot of things funny to me about this quote, but one that sticks out to me is using Shaq as an example. Yeah, like Shaq was Mr. Take. Shout out to the most dominant player of all time. But Kobe complained numerous times about Shaq, his off season, his work ethic, and Shaq was the first person to be like, "Yo, mind your business on how I prepare. I'm gonna come out there. I'm gonna compete." And Shaq's his personality, tenacity on the court, showed up through and through, and he was a winner. And time again, he sacrificed in order to do what was needed. In the off season, it wasn't always the best time or what he wanted to do, but you know, players play better when they're happy, and you got to support the player the best way they can. And Luka has proven, like we compared to last week with Zion, it's like he's proven he can do his job. He can show up and he can play at a high level. Trust him a little bit more. And I think that if you read between the lines here, he's kind of alluding to what one of the narratives that have been circulating since Luka was traded to the Lakers, and obviously one of them being was the Mavs didn't want to pay him the exorbitant amount of money that he was due, way more than Jason Tatum, but was that they were not satisfied with Luka's work ethic on and off the court. Now, whether that was his weight, whether that was his conditioning, we'll never know. But if you read between the lines, this is kind of alluding to that very narrative, and he's kind of doubling down on it. Now, granted, we have heard issues about Luka and his weight before. That's not this new storyline, but we're talking about a player who may have been, 15, 20 pounds overweight throughout various parts of the season, maybe coming into the season. But we're also talking about a player who was averaging
triple doubles.
Yeah.
We're also talking about a player who was all NBA consistently, 5-6 years in a row. Like
3-time first team all NBA. He's got the second best PER since Mike.
Right.
Like when you sit there talking about a guy that does it, night in, night out. So I think sometimes, man, I don't know who is guiding this new owner, but it's just got to be like, hey, man, if it's a Ferrari, it's a Ferrari. Just drive that bad boy.
Yeah.
Like, you understand?
Even if it got some miles on it, it's still a Ferrari.
Even if it got some miles on it, it's still
I know,
a Ferrari.
that's right.
Like, at very least. And then when you sit there and you're saying I don't think people comprehend generational. Like you're not getting a top pick for a while.
Right.
Period, point blank. I mean, the next great generational kid might be 14, 15 years old, or we call AJ DeBenza or whoever, but you're nowhere within. You're going to be in the middle of the pack for the next 10 years unless you decide to trade for a guy or get Anthony Edwards who's going down to San Antonio or those type of moves. You no longer have a landing spot where it's something sexy. In the next couple of years, Anthony Davis is going to be going, Kyrie's going, and hopefully Max Christie develops. But what are we talking about?
Well, listen, I said this before, and I'll say it again. I think that the curse of the Dallas Mavericks has only just begun.
Yes.
I equated it to the curse of the Bambino when the Red Sox traded away Babe Ruth to the Yankees, and they were cursed for a very long time.
Yes, they should have.
And Mavs fans are making sure that curse happens relatively quickly. They are still not taking this trade very well, and they're letting the front office know that. So there's this guy on the Jumbotron. I can't repeat what he said, but if you are a mouth reader, or a lip reader, I should say, he said some not so nice things about Nico and was escorted out of the arena. So there was also another altercation where there were boos. There was a sign that was created by one of the fans. I don't know if we have an image of that said basically JFK was treated better in Dallas. For those of you who don't know, JFK was assassinated in Dallas. So that is a major roast. That's extreme.
That's
also,
aggressive.
fire Nico, like you just saw on the Jumbotron. The JFK one took me out, though.
No, absolutely. Let's just remember, it's just basketball, bro. There's a lot going on in this world where we might need y'all to hit the streets for. All right, but what's occurring? I'm not tripping. It was wild. When we're sitting here after this, man, you traded 25-year-old Luka. And once again, I say generational. The fans aren't happy, and the fans, in Dallas have done a great job of making that place a great home court advantage. They've been behind, the organization for decades. And, And like we just said, this is coming off a year they just made it to the finals.
These are fans carrying caskets to the front of the American Airlines Center.
Oh, wow.
I'm assuming it's the death of the Mavericks organization. Like you can see there are signs that say fire Nico. Luka is the culture. I mean, they're having a full-blown protest. This just goes to show how much Luka meant to the Dallas Mavericks fan base, to the city of Dallas, to what Dallas was trying to build. And it's mind-boggling to me because when we always talk about generational players, we talk about how much franchises desire one.
Yes.
And how much having the right franchise piece can change your entire organization. And the Mavs had that. And it wasn't like there was something so egregious happening between Luke that we know of. Yeah. Now, it's yet to be shared what actually is going on behind the scenes, because I have a hard time believing that you trade a generational player putting up his kind of numbers because he's 15 pounds overweight. I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, I believe it's because anytime I know Kyrie's sitting there man, if I'm not you know what I mean?
Right.
This is the first time I ain't been a problem. They're saying he's doing something bad, and I would love to hear the story come out because a generational player, but at the same time, he's only 25. It could have been room to fix it. You could have figured
only 25.
Yeah, only
exactly.
25. You could have brought in an older guy that could have really taught him something. If it comes down to leadership, you could have brought in a leader to stand beside him. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there was ways to be able to make it fix as opposed to just trading them off. And once again, dealing with what the future of your organization is going to have to come with. You're waiting for a Luka Doncic. Jason Tatum's still alive. Anthony Edwards is still alive. Victor Wembanyama. There's a lot of talented players where it's no, we need one of those tonight.
Right.
Having one of those is going to help you every night.
Well, we are going to add another player to our roster after the break because Drew Hanlen is in the building.
Ooh, there we go.
And he is going to be talking some NBA topics with us. And also later on in the show, we are going to be talking about his new book that just came out. So you don't want to move. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everybody. Ashley Nicole Moss here, Evan Turner, and we are joined now by a very special guest. Drew Hanlen is in the building. What's up, Drew? Who I just learned is a St. Louis legend.
Yeah, St. Louis OG legend, the old head, the original one, man. So I love seeing hoop legends, and they can't really spit their whole history. So I always try to give them credit, but Drew was one of those.
I love that.
For sure.
I was the undersized guy that just had to overwork and end up doing some good things. And then when I realized that I was 5'11", I was an average athlete, I said, okay, I got to go from playmaker to player maker and start helping these guys out. So that's kind of my journey.
Hey, Chris Paul's kind of 5'11" too, so.
I know. I'm not Chris Paul.
Listen, I want to ask you about another St. Louis legend, Bradley Beal. We were talking a little bit about this off air. Obviously, his name was circulating in the media for weeks when we talked about Jimmy Butler, who's now a Golden State Warrior. A lot of people, Evan included, said, hey, you're messing up the trade, Bradley, but Bradley also has a family to consider and other things. And a lot of people were wondering, would Bradley even waive his no trade clause for the right situation? Give us a little insight on what actually happened.
Yeah, I felt terrible for Brad. Brad was my first client. He's like a brother to me. And to see him getting thrown under the bus like crazy, the thing that I kept telling people, I was like, you guys act like he completely fell off. I mean, he's shooting 51 or 2% from the field. He's shooting over 40% from three. His usage is obviously down, so his role doesn't look the same that it did in Washington. But, the story that wasn't shared with anybody was the Suns never had a conversation with Brad. And that was the most frustrating part, was there were all these rumors that were circulating, all these trades that were being thrown out there. And everyone was talking about Brad as if he was, holding these trump cards that weren't being played all because of him. But the truth is they never approached him about a trade. They never said, hey, here are some scenarios. So, Brad being a loyal guy, the reason why he stayed in Washington for so long, the reason why, even though the Suns are not in a great position right now, he's still trying to fight and claw to get them back in the playoff race. He was like, listen, they never approached me. If they would have came to me and approached me and presented options and said, this is what we think is best for the team and this is what we think is best for you, he said, I would have obviously considered something, but there was never a conversation. So, a lot of the fans that were angry at Brad, they got to understand that it wasn't on him. He was never a part of those discussions if there were the discussions happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, so apologize to Bradley Beal.
My fault, Brad. I knew you wouldn't be in trip like that, for real.
Yeah.
It was the media that got to me.
Yeah, okay. Before we dive into some of these rapid fire NBA topics, we would be remiss not to ask you about Luka. Everybody and their mom is trying to figure out, even my mom. Now, listen, my mom's a casual NBA fan, and even she came to me and said, I don't understand. Why would they trade Luka? I said, your guess is as good as mine. So, Drew, why would the Mavs trade Luka? Does anybody have the answer?
Not at all. I mean, to be honest with you, every NBA franchise is looking for a star player. If you look back to literally the 1990s, back when MJ was winning championships, and then you had the Kobe, and then Tim Duncan, and then Shaq, and then D Wade, and every team has had a top 7 MVP candidate. Besides two teams, it was the Spurs had one year where they had two guys that were, I think it was in 2014. Yep, Duncan and Parker. Those guys were tied at 12th in MVP, so they still had two really high level, all NBA caliber players. And then the 2019 Raptors had Kawhi Leonard, who finished 9th in MVP voting for the regular season. Obviously, some of that was due to not playing the amount of games that maybe are required to get up there to get that MVP bump, but. I mean, you have to have a star to win a championship. They had a star. They had a top 7 guy, and they traded him away, which is why I think so many people are shocked, because there's only a few guys. There's only, like I said, every team that has won a championship has had a top 7 MVP caliber player. They had one. They gave him away. And I know that maybe the fit is better with AD in theory, but you just don't trade away a franchise superstar that has not even come close to scratching the height of his career.
So When it comes down to it, you say you went from a playmaker to a player maker. What does it take to build like a real superstar? You had Jason Tatum since he was younger. What goes into that where it makes him untradeable?
Wait, hold that question, because we're going to dive into that in the later block when we talk about his book and everything that goes into it. So we're going to run through some of these rapid fire topics real quick, because Joel Embiid, somebody you know very well, was in the news recently. And it was because he gave a rather confusing quote to two different media outlets, okay? So for starters, speaking to Lisa Salters regarding his injury, he said, quote, he believes that it will be the case, but he definitely thinks it will likely take another surgery and another recovery period, something he didn't have after the initial injury last February. Now, post-game, he actually walked back that quote and told the Associated Press, I think the straightforward answer is that when you've got something that's inconsistent, at some point, you've got to do something about it. We don't know what it is. We're looking into every single option. So with Joel Embiid, obviously when he is healthy, I don't think anybody can argue he's not one of, if not the best center in the NBA. But I feel like because of the injuries and how far removed we have been from seeing that version of him, everyone has seemed to have forgotten and want to know, what are the 76ers planning to do about Joel Embiid?
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I talk to Joel every single day. He's been a client for his entire NBA career. We started working together before his first NBA game. And, and obviously we still discuss all the things that are going on with his game and his body and everything like that. But the truth is, what he said was correct. I mean, he doesn't know. Like, I think that, the couple things that are thrown out there all the time is like, oh, well, Joel Embiid's just lazy. And I'm like, guys, you don't go from picking up a basketball for the first time as a 16-year-old and literally, travel on the JV basketball team to becoming one of the all-time greatest scorers, an MVP candidate year in, year out, a guy that's won an MVP, that's won multiple scoring titles. So I'm like, that's not the case. It's not that he's not doing anything and everything he can. It's just they haven't found a solution for the problem. It's one of those things where, if he overworks to get himself back in shape, sometimes and he doesn't respond very well. If he tries to, relax and have more load management, well, then obviously the cardio's not there, and that leads to, other issues. So I just think that, right now they're still trying to consult all the experts and figure out a solution so that he doesn't just go out there, dominate a game, and then knee doesn't respond, and now he has to sit out. And trust me, it's a mental thing too, in the aspect of he wants to be out there for his team. He wants to be able to compete. He knows that if he's out there at his best, healthy, that the 76ers are a contender, and he knows that if he's not out there healthy, that they're not. And so, when you look at the 76ers season, obviously everybody had these high aspirations and kind of plans for this season, and they haven't lived up to those. He feels like the responsibility is on his shoulders, because ultimately, if they could figure out his health, he knows that, him at his best is able to compete with anybody when he's out there on the floor.
I mean, Evan, you've dealt with injury throughout your NBA career. How true is it what Drew's saying from the psyche of an athlete and what goes through preparing yourself to get back on the floor and the trials and tribulations of that process?
Yeah, I think it's two different levels. I never went to the level of MVP level. So when it's coming down from being like the fifth option to being a guy that's expecting to steer the ship, it's not only like, I have to play at the highest level that I possibly have, but they're expecting me to win. I'm playing in a city like Philadelphia, and it's not like my first injury. There's a reason I'm always using this quote-unquote injury excuse, or injuries always popping up to stop us from where people are expecting me to be at, which is, you see Jokic just won a championship. It's a dominant big. Philadelphia, for the past few years, we've been saying, they have a chance to win a chip. They have a chance to win a chip, and sometimes the playoffs hit, and he might not always show up, or injury might be it. And it's like, when it comes down to it, the psyche is dealing with the urgency and sometimes not falling into what the media thinks, because they're expecting so much from you. And it's like, if you can't hoop, you can't hoop.
Drew, I'm going to give you a chance to squash a rumor before we move on to the next topic here. There are rumors that the Philadelphia 76ers are starting to think about life post Joel Embiid because of how much this injury has just been nagging in some way, shape, or form. Is that fact or is that foul?
I would say that is foul. The only reason I say that is they just signed him to obviously a 5-year max extension. The stat I gave earlier was the best example. They know they need a top 7, guy in the league to win a championship. And you also look at, even to the playoff comment, that you just made, like, Joel, even with his injuries, he had 2 random injuries that, he gets elbowed in the face by Pascal Siakam, has to wear a mask. He gets, run into by Markelle Fultz, has to wear a mask. He breaks his finger. Like, all these are preventable injuries. These are random injuries that a lot of them he's experienced, which are unfortunate. But even then, if you look at his playoff plus minus, and if you look at his on-off numbers, it's through the roof. Like the Raptors series, they end up losing in Game 7. I think in the 12 minutes that he was out of the court, like it was just the difference of the team is so different. So the 76ers are very aware that when Joel is at his best and when he's healthy, they have a chance to beat anybody and everybody. But they also have not been able to get a healthy playoff run yet from Joel. And so that's something that I think is frustrating for 76ers fans, because they see these moments where he goes and scores 70 on Wembanyama last year. They see him go head-to-head with Jokic and dominate that matchup every time they play. They see him, go out and last year average 35, 12, and 6 before he got injured, and they're going, God, if we could just have this for 2 months during the postseason run, like we would actually have a chance to hang up a banner, but they just haven't got that. And so it's frustrating as a 76ers fan. It's also frustrating for Joel. Like no one's more frustrated than Joel. And, being a guy that's in his corner, a guy that is constantly trying to, motivate him to be more and do more. I can tell everybody that he is doing everything in his power to prevent all of the preventable injuries. And some of it has just been bad luck. You know what I mean? Like landing on somebody's foot on a chase down block. And part of it is just that's how hard he plays. The first game he came back this year, right away, there was a loose ball and he dove out of bounds. And I'm like, Joe, be a little smarter. Like with that loose ball isn't that important. Your health is more important. And he's like, Drew, you don't understand. I haven't learned how to have an off switch. I just know how to compete at the highest level every time I'm out there. And so, it's hard for him to just coast through a game just because he's wired to just go try to win. I mean, that's how he is in Monopoly. He's one of those guys that he won't trade. He won't trade with you because he had got to have Boardwalk and Park
That's
Place.
how my dad is in Monopoly too. It's the worst.
Yeah, so I would say that's foul just because the 76ers know they need Joel at his best, healthy, to be a legitimate contender. We've seen what the 76ers look like without Joel Embiid this year. They have not been able to compete, and they have not been able to put themselves in a contender role without him. So I think it's pretty obvious to everybody they need Joel at his best and healthy if they actually want to have a legitimate chance to win a championship.
Well, unfortunately for 2 players that were named All-Stars, they are not healthy, so they won't be going to the All-Star game, and that is Giannis and Anthony Davis. So Kyrie Irving and Trae Young were named All-Star replacements, and a lot of people were confused why Trae Young wasn't an All-Star to begin with. Now, we all know when All-Star weekend comes around, everybody has an opinion on how to fix it, what's wrong with it, who should be an All-Star, who's not an All-Star, X, Y, and Z, you name it. Evan, did they get the replacements at least right?
Yeah, I think so. I've been a big Trae Young fan. I think what he does over time, he's had 3 or 4 years in leading the league in assists. I think he always tries to step up for his team. Obviously, his shooting isn't always the best, but I think he's been in the dog days with his team trying to keep them afloat. And then when you look at Kyrie Irving,
Team Shaq is a cheat code, by the way, but go ahead.
For sure. And then you look at Kyrie Irving, man. Kyrie, that's Uncle Drew. Drew Hanlen was the original Uncle Drew, and then he gave the name to Kyrie Irving. So I'm super hyped for this. I'm a big fan of both of them, and I think the game really needs them, to be honest with you.
Drew, everyone has an opinion on how to fix the All-Star game, how to fix the format, how to fix the weekend. Obviously, Super Saturday has lost its luster since guys don't want to do the slam dunk contest anymore like they did 10, 15 years ago. How do we fix it? How do we bring it back to the golden days?
I think it's hard. I think that, Evan knows this because he's been around the NBA All-Star. These guys have so many different obligations, from media to also all their brands and their sponsorships to fan engagements, that they don't get to do a normal routine, and this is also the only chance for them to actually rest and recover their bodies, because 82 games is a brutal season. And then when you add on the postseason, which is the most important part of the season, they want to be healthy for their teams. And if the ultimate goal is to win a championship, that's what they're focused on, is doing anything and everything that can help them win a championship. And so I think it's hard. Trust me, I get so many angry fans mad at me because they're like, all these dudes go at each other in your runs over the summer. We see them playing one-on-one. Yeah. Like, why can't we get a one-on-one contest like, KD and Joel and Jason and them all competing in your gym? And I'm like, it's just hard because, this is the middle of the season. Guys are coming in banged up a little bit. This is a time for them to recover. Also, it's not like they're getting sleep. They're doing, constant media obligation, fan obligation, brand obligation. And then it comes time to play a game and they're like out of the routine. They're not doing their normal lifts. They've also traveled in and out, and they have so many of their family members there that they also have to entertain. This weekend has always been celebrating some of the biggest and brightest stars. And I think the problem is, as the media and the brands and just basically the off-court business of basketball has grown, it's made it harder for players to just lock in and focus on the game. So now it's looked at as more of a chance to just be out there and celebrate that you are one of the best instead of competing to prove that you're the best.
Well, guys, we are not done with Evan and Drew. We will be right back after this break, and we're going to talk Drew's new book. We're going to build our perfect NBA player and maybe talk a little Kevin Durant.
It's just business, man. It's just part of the business, Everybody is bought and sold in this league, so anybody can be up for auction, So I understand that. It's just about getting back on the court, trying to go out there and play the game that I love, It's a part of the business, though, man. We all got to understand that.
Yes, so bought and sold and auctioned during Black History Month is a little wild, yes. I would say. I mean, those aren't the words I would use. Drew, feelings, thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I think what he was trying to really say is, after seeing a superstar like Luka get traded, anybody can get traded. I think that, the league used to have these unwritten untouchables, like these players that unless you offered the farm, you were not even considering trading them. And I think that every player now realizes, wow, it's unlikely that these top players get traded, but it's no longer an untouchable conversation that can't be had.
Also, too, I think KD has seen everything. He's seen everything. He's been traded in the middle of the seasons. He's left during off seasons. He's been a talk of the town at one point. He understands. He sees every single thing. So I think you're talking to somebody that's been around for 16 years and is just numb to all of it, which is perfectly fine. I think even what he said was he might not even think it was that wild, but he's seen a lot and he understands the business of basketball. And for him, every year is $55 million, so he's bought and sold, and it is what it is.
Maybe let's find a different phrase than bought and sold.
Somebody's going to give me a bag, a Brinks truck.
Let's work on that.
Yeah, somebody's going to give me everything I ever wanted.
Well, I'm going to give Drew the opportunity now to build the next franchise player that isn't untouchable, okay? So this guy's never going to be traded by the organization in which drafts him, all right? So I want you to build your perfect player, and I'm going to run down certain attributes, and I want you to give me which player's attribute you want for that specific topic, okay? So basketball IQ.
I'm going to go with LeBron James. I think that's what makes him one of the best players of all time, is just he's so sharp. He's always a step ahead. And, he's just really always out there doing things that just improve the team offensively and defensively. Okay, let's go shooting. This is an obvious one. Steph Curry, greatest shooter of all time. The versatility, off the bounce, off the catch. He adds so much gravity to, the game, and he just pulls in defenders. It is amazing how, NBA players that are guarding the best players over and over, as soon as he cross half court, they're like, oh, please don't give him any airspace. So this is an obvious Steph Curry right here. Okay, ball handling. Kyrie. Yeah. I don't think we've ever seen anybody that's had the combination of the ball on a string handles with the footwork. I think that's a lot of people don't understand that ball handling isn't necessarily all the dribbles. It's also the footwork, and he's got that combination that makes him unstoppable. Passing, I'm going to go with my man Tyrese Halliburton. I just think that he is so gifted with finding, passes. He can jump in the air. Most of the time you tell young kids, do not jump to pass, unless you know there's a pass there. He jumps and then finds it. I know there's other people that will go with other players, but I think Tyrese Halliburton's the best passer in the NBA. Evan, I heard a chuckle from you.
Oh, no, that shocked me. I just heard Tyrese. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Who would you have gone with?
Man, people don't like it. Trae Young is a really, modern day right now.
Trae's awesome.
Trae Young is an unbelievable passer. I've seen that up top, but I do give you the Tyrese Halliburton. The dude does 20 to none assist turnover ratio, so it is appreciative. Okay.
And you think Halliburton led the NBA in assists last year. This year, Trae's leading the league in assists, so we're right there. You know what I mean?
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. No, and Halliburton's assist to turnover ratio is crazy. So I do appreciate what he does with that.
All right, let's talk tenacity motor. So who plays the hardest? Who do you want their edge, if you will?
I would go with Giannis. I think Giannis just, he's just one of those guys, both offensively and defensively, is just getting after it each and every possession. And so when you see somebody that in transition is just head down, I'm getting to the rim, and then defensively also wants to try to lock up, I think that's the motor that I would ultimately choose.
Okay, this one I like. Perimeter defense.
Perimeter defense. That's a good one because, to be honest with you, when I think about defense, I always think about versatility because now in the NBA, everybody switches everything. I would have easily gone with like a prime Kawhi and stuff like that, but maybe somebody like a Lou Dort or somebody like that, just because he loves defense. I think when you're talking about if we're just isolating on that, like he takes pride in just defense. But I think there's a lot of guys in that conversation. I don't think that's as obvious answer as some of the other ones.
Drew Holiday.
Ooh.
Drew Holiday's definitely up there.
Drew Holiday.
Been unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, interior defense.
This one, I'm going to go with Joel Embiid. I just see how he's an eraser out there. And obviously, I know Wemby would be one of those people that people be like, what, Wemby? The only thing is, when Wemby goes up against Joel and he goes up against Jokic, he's struggled a little bit against those bigger body players. And so that's for right now until Wemby develops that frame on him. I'm going to go with Joel just because I've never seen somebody just cook Joel. Like, if you go back and look at big guys and go look at their numbers, the only guys that do well are guys that maybe hit some threes on them for pick and pop, but no one around the rim, which is what we're talking about defensively, ever, puts up a big number against them.
All right, let's go clutch gene. This is my favorite.
All right, so listen, everyone hates on him, so I'm going to go. Everyone goes Dame time and stuff like that. I'm going Jason Tatum. You know why I'm going Jason Tatum? Because I think he can get his shot off anybody. I think that, obviously his numbers the last couple of years have actually backed it up. He's made, more game-winning shots than anybody and stuff like that. I know that there's some times where he settles for fadeaways, but at 6'10", with the bag of, a guard, I just trust him. I think he can get a shot off anybody, and I think that if you put him in the right spots on the floor, I think that he's going to get you a bucket. All
right, last one, height.
I mean, height. I think that's a pretty obvious one. You know what I mean? I think we'd all go Wemby because it is a cheat code. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing to see sometimes where he'll be down around the rim and people start getting ready to go up for a shot and they'd make a U-turn. I'm like, they didn't even attempt him. They didn't even try him. So you look at how many blocks he's averaging, which is so impressive, but that doesn't even factor in the non-box score numbers, which are how many times people just say, no, I'm not getting my stuff thrown off the glass and just, peel out and decide to make a different play.
All right. Well, we're going to recap real quick. Drew's perfect NBA player. Here you go. Evan, any changes that you would make real quick?
Like I said, perimeter defense, I would do Drew Holiday. I think other than that, I think he pretty much got it right. I mean, clutch, he's absolutely right with Jason Tatum. The 1 year I did coach him, I saw him make 5 game winners alone. So he's definitely got that clutch gene. But other than that, I throw Dame Lillard in there.
All right. Well, outside of Drew being a St. Louis legend, the ultimate skills, basketball, whatever you want to call coach, he is also now an author of his new book, Stop BSing Yourself, A Practical Guide to Personal Growth with a Mindful Approach. Drew, tell us about this book. What made you want to write it? Everything that went into it.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, for me, everyone realizes that I do on-court skills training, and they think that that's all I do. They think that I just rebound and pass for these really good players, and they're like, oh, he's just lucky that he happens to know all these guys. But the truth is there's a lot of work that goes into helping players get results. And it starts by building these customized blueprints that allow you to, lock in on certain aspects of your game and then actually get the results so that each player can improve, over time and build their game. And then the second part is the mentality part, the confidence part. And that's a part that a lot of people kind of, push to the side. But to be honest with you, I'm just as much of a life coach and a therapist and somebody that's just, there for them during the tough times and then trying to, push them and challenge them to get over these plateaus and get over their insecurities or get over anything that's getting in the way from them being their best on the court. And so, I decided to put it together in a book that, people could have the exact same system, the exact same strategies that help my NBA guys not only get results on the court, but also improve their life off the court. And so that's what it's really about. It's literally giving them the exact system. It's, identifying the one thing you want to improve in your life, whether that's finances, whether that's your health, whether that's your relationship with your kids or your spouse, or if you're a hooper, improve your game. and then break it down into actionable steps and then actually follow those steps. Because I think everybody knows that there's gaps in their life that they've allowed to exist, between where they are and where they want to be. But very few people actually change that. You see people walking around and they're carrying an extra 20 pounds on them, or you see people that, stick with jobs that they don't like, or you see people that are in relationships that are toxic. And it's like, those are the same things that, you have to break, just like NBA players have to change their shooting mechanics or improve their finishing around the rim. It's the exact same blueprint. So that's what the book is all about. It's to help athletes that want to improve their mentality, improve their game, but also help everyday people that want to improve their life.
Now you can ask your question, Evan.
Yeah, so you said earlier, you're like, I went from being a playmaker to a player maker, and we discussed generational talent, top players, and everything like that. You said Joel Embiid didn't pick up a ball till he was 16. We would say he's generational, and you were able to meet Jason Tatum at a young age. Tell us about that process and what it takes to be, a generational talent, but much more to say that I've worked hard and not that I'm just skilled or gifted.
I think the three things that stand out to me is, the first thing is they love basketball. And so that they're willing to do anything and everything. A lot of people talk about it. They're about it. They're doing film at night. They're doing the treatment when they need to. They're stretching. They're recovering. They're eating well, sleeping well, and then obviously pouring into their game. The second thing that they do is they are coachable. They constantly are getting critiqued. They're constantly breaking down their game. They're constantly asking, how can I improve my game? And then the third thing is, this it factor. I always say the great ones have this it factor. The ability to constantly just believe, more and more and more and expect more and more and more so that they can get past those plateaus where most people just kind of put themselves in a box and stay there.
Drew, your book came out yesterday, and I'm sure it's about to be a bestseller. Thank you so much for joining us on Triple Threat. I already have a copy. I cannot wait to dive into it. Evan, do you have a copy?
I was going to buy it from the store right after this.
Okay, good.
Barney's and Noble.
Make sure you do that. We'll make sure we drop the links and all that of where you can purchase Drew's new book, Stop BSing Yourself. And Drew, we wish you the best of luck. I'm sure I will see you soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys.
All right, bro. See you, Drew. Appreciate you.
So I put out this tweet the other day, and I said, if All-Star Weekend added a one-on-one competition, who would be your dream matchup? Current players only. Y'all did not waste any time giving me some answers, so let's run through them. We have Kyrie versus Steph. How do you feel about that? I feel like Kyrie's cooking them, but sure.
You can't talk about him. Kyrie's winning.
Yeah, Kyrie's winning for sure.
But Steph, I would still bet my money on you.
Okay, I like the loyalty.
Sure.
Let's see what else we got here real quick. LeBron, KD, that would be interesting. Two old heads going at it.
Nah, bro, KD will win. I want to see KD, Jason Tatum.
Ooh,
that would be the matchup.
Okay.
KD will win this one.
Okay.
I want to see KD, Jason Tatum. That's worth it.
Well, we got Tatum versus SGA. How do you feel about that?
Nah, Tatum's too big. SGA versus Anthony Edwards. Tatum, get him up out of there. He's too long. Tatum's an elite defender.
Okay. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Imaginary. Ooh, Kyrie versus Steph. We had that. KD versus Braun. Ant versus SGA. Do you like that?
I like that a lot.
Wemby versus Giannis.
I can kind of like that. I
guess.
I don't want to see Giannis playing one-on-one. Not gonna lie.
Jokic versus Embiid. We finally get the one-on-one matchup we've been craving as NBA fans.
Yeah, that would be lit. I just think Embiid would be too much offense. I don't see Jokic guarding.
Obviously, injury sliders will be off everybody, so no worries. We also have Luka versus Harden. That could be interesting. And Luka maybe 20 pounds lighter if you're the Mavericks organization. And then I hope he wins so the Mavs look extra dumb. For myself, Evan, and our very special guest, Drew Hanlen, make sure you pick up a copy of his book, Stop BSing Yourself. And if you missed this episode of Triple Threat, you can find the full episode on YouTube. And we will see you next week.